the longer you go, the more chances you take, and then you just kind of realize that you might as well just do more and more stuff. Otherwise, what's the point? Try new things. You have to enjoy the process as much as the end result in a lot of ways. Otherwise, you just aren't into that thing. And when we started the band, we're like, let's take all of our favorite extreme death metal bands and combine those with a little bit of classical music and super fast speed rap, and just like combine all those things.
If there's a content creator that you love that is putting content out all the time, they are working all the time. Like if someone's putting out 4 videos a week, they're not doing anything else but making those videos all the time.
When I was teaching kids, a lot of the time, I would talk about fear choices. Are you making this choice out of fear? Because if you're making it out of fear, then you should like reconsider the choice, because the fear choice is almost never good.
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU night, Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. I am flying solo tonight because we have a very special guest that is a very Kevin guest. I am sort of indulging here and being selfish, but you'll find out why in a second. So Matt is currently just basking in his TCU night off, probably doing something like reorganizing granola bars or something like that. If you know Matt, you know that's probably how he's spending his little TCU vacation. But as for me, I am talking to somebody I am very excited to talk to. So my guest tonight rains down from Vancouver, British Columbia. That's Canada, folks. Although his guitar playing is more lightning and thunder than it is the gentle drizzle of Chet Atkins. Dean Lamb wields 8-string guitars that somehow hold up to a constant assault of sweeps, taps, pinches, bends, hammer-ons, offs, and anything that you can do to twist and yank a guitar string at superhuman speed. His shocking combination of tempo and accuracy, seriously, we're talking songs up to 400 beats per minute, helps carve a unique sound for the technical death metal band Archspire. But Dean is also a YouTuber. His personal channel showcases him tackling 4 levels of death metal with his talented wife Claire. He live streams, he gives advice to aspiring guitar players who'd be happy to be a 10th as prolific as Dean himself. And Archspire has a new album coming out on October 29th called Bleed the Future. I'm very, very excited about that because this band is basically all I listen to. Not literally, but kind of literally. So, Dean, I watched a van tour video, an Archspire van tour video, and it seemed pretty cramped in that van. So when you're touring, how do you manage to sleep in that thing with all those other dudes and not completely lose your mind or commit some sort of unspeakable crime?
Well, thanks for that amazing intro, by the way. Oh my goodness. I feel, I'm in shock. What a very nice intro. Going on tour with a death metal band like you are quite familiar with, I suppose, it means it's a very niche genre, and it's not the most niche genre, but you have to make take some luxuries away from being a touring musician and be able to pay your rent and be able to pay your internet bill so you can have cool conversations with people like yourself. So when we're on tour, we're in a regular 15-passenger van that we've kitted out with bunks in the back of it. This is just when we're on tour in the US, right? So in Europe, it's a whole different thing. But when you have to sleep with 6 and sometimes 7 people in one van at night, you learn the intimate smells and aromas. It's a very like aromatic experience, which it's in a lot of ways, if I'm being honest, I hope I can be honest here,
Sure.
is that it's been nice to not have to get those smells in the last 2 years too far up my olfactory, because the the jam space that we jam at is sort of like we basically call everything our van. If we're in our jam space writing, rehearsing, whatever, it's an equally crummy place to be. It just doesn't have wheels. So we're like, oh, this is just the van. This is just the van that doesn't drive. And if we're backstage somewhere and there's, gross, weird artwork on the walls and the whole place smells kind of like some, I don't know, just like musty and weird, you're like, this is just the van again. Like everything is the van. So, and I'll give you one insight, which is extremely unfortunate with our touring vehicle that we have right now. It beeps every 5 minutes for 30 seconds. So the roll stability control sensor has broken years ago. And so when you're driving it, anytime you have the keys on in the ignition, even if it's in accessory mode or whatever, it goes dee 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 in a tritone for 30 seconds every 5 minutes. And when we tell people that, they say, oh, yeah, so every time you turn it on, it does it once or whatever. No, every 5 minutes. So if you are driving from one show to another, about 8 hours worth of driving, and you need to do all of that in one go, you hear it. I don't know if anybody wants to do the math on that, but you hear it a lot. And it's been nice to not hear that sound, but it looks like things are sort of ramping up again. So we might be hearing that sound quite a bit more in our near future.
Is it not possible to have some sort of car guru buddy that knows how to disable that? That's not possible? I mean, you must have explored this possibility.
Well, I can tell you that a lot of mechanics think it's the seatbelt, and they're very confident. They say, no, it's the seatbelt alarm. And we say, no, it's not. There's a light on the dashboard that says RSC, whatever. And they say, I think I'm going to try and fix it. I'm like, okay, you try and fix it. And they never fix it. And so at this point, I'm thinking about blowing up the van. So if you see on the news, Vancouver extreme metal band, some sort of arson, blowing it probably is me. I'm just going to admit to it right now. If you see a large white van on fire, billowing black smoke, and you can hear the subtle sounds of beeping off in the distance, yeah, you just call me up and I'll confess to that, because it's a maddening sound. But
I wonder, Dean, you have a sizable YouTube following at this point. Your channel's doing great. Have you considered making a video about this very problem and just putting it on the internet, to the internet, to solve the case of the beeping van?
To be honest, until this very moment, no.
This is a good idea. This is a good idea.
Well, for me, YouTube is I mean, I've had a YouTube channel since 2009, but I really haven't done very much on that channel until, I really went pretty hard at the beginning of the pandemic. Before that, on tour, I was uploading video every month or whatever and experimenting with some long form stuff. But recently, let's say in the last 2 years, I've gotten very into pushing that as sort of like, hey, I'm not touring, so I have lots of time to experiment and explore my love for cinematography, my love for editing, my love for writing, coming up with ideas, joke writing. I love that stuff so much. And so it's pretty new. So now that with sort of touring is potentially back on the menu, and YouTube has sort of become, a lot of ways my main thing right now, at least for the time being, maybe those will converge and I'll finally get rid of the beeping. It's a good idea.
Yeah. I just think it would be a fun video in general for you to make it very serious, very over the top, kind of campy. I mean, I didn't mention in the intro, but your videos are very funny and edited very well.
Oh man, thank you so much.
Your you and your wife's chemistry. I mean, it seems silly to say this because you're literally married, but that doesn't mean that you have good comedic chemistry with the person that you married. But you two are so funny playing off of each other. You have a unique relationship in that regard. I think it comes across well in your videos.
Well, that's really cool. That's actually her idea to do videos together, and I fought against it, which I was against it. I said, no, nobody wants to hear us play guitar at the same time. It's going to sound bad. We're going to be playing over top of each other, and it's going to be a cacophonous sort of awful mixture. And I'll be learning something. You'll be learning the same thing. It'll sound bad together. And she finally was just like, okay, listen, we're going to film it and I'll edit it. And I'll just put it, we can put it on your channel. It's all good. Let's just try it. And it was like really fun. And we had like, just what was there to lose, really? We're just like, yeah, whatever, we'll do it. And yeah, we got some like good comments from it, and we did a few more. And then I'm sure you know exactly what this is like, but when you start with an idea and you keep banging in on that format, and you start refining the format and refining it and adding more to it and getting it a little bit better, and every time you're like, oh, this is the best one. Oh, this is the best. It's an addictive thing, dude. It is super addictive, and I love that. But you get the trade-off of like, I've gotten faster at editing video than I ever have been before. I'm like way faster at editing video, but the amount of stuff I put in each video is way more. So it kind of evens out. It's like,
right.
Well, yeah, I'm faster, but I mean, like I put in 10 times the amount of content now. Like, so, I'm sure you know exactly what that's like.
It ends up being a wash. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken on this podcast before about how once you hit the wall of that addiction, it's really hard to keep doing the format. So there are a lot of formats that over the years that I have killed, a lot that I have killed, not because people didn't still want to watch them, but because I just ran out of that juice to, like, I felt like this, I hit the peak, or like I hit the limit of my abilities to make this type of video the best that I can do. And rather than continuing to plateau, I'll just throw that baby out and start a new one, which is a weird thing. It's disappointing to fans, but like as a creator, you kind of have to have that passion that you're talking about to sit in front of the computer for X number of hours to put the thing together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're not excited
I totally
about
agree.
it, then you're not going to do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you do, I mean, I think you also notice that a little bit in the viewership too. Sometimes you'll do a format and you'll hammer the format, hammer it, and you'll hit like a high. And then you'll do a video and you're like, okay, I did exactly the same thing, slightly differently, but it's exactly the same format, and there's less viewership. Now, not that that's the end all be all of content creation, because like things fluctuate. That's just how it's going to be. You 1 month you'll get a lot of new subs and a lot of views, and the next you won't. And it's just like, you just have to deal with it. It's just like anything else. But when you hit that peak of the format and it starts to sort of go down, it's like, yeah, maybe I should move on to something else. I mean, I've learned so much from this thing. Maybe I can, sort of just transition and keep doing the thing that I love, which is filming and editing, but change it up and keep things fresh. And I actually did a video recently. Are you familiar with Finn McKinty?
No.
Okay, so the punk rock MBA, he's a YouTuber. He's great. He's hundreds of thousands of subs or whatever. Really nice guy, musical, talks about music on his channel. I recently did a project with a company that he works with, and he was like, do a talk to the camera video where you talk about how and why you got good at guitar and how somebody else can do it. And I did that, and that's the best video I've ever done on my channel right now. It's 100,000 views in a week or whatever. For me is like, whoa, like that's big for my channel. I about 60,000 subs, and I'm like, that's the switch of the format where it's like, okay, that was 1/10 of the effort. It came naturally. It was fun. I didn't stress about it once, and people like got something out of it. And it wasn't a comedic video. It was like maybe like an encouraging kind of video, and it was stuff that I believe. Like, I mean, I taught guitar for 12 years, so I learned a lot of stuff during that time. So yes, switching it up and keeping with the filming and the editing and the content creation, but just like, I'll just try this real quick. And sometimes you'll hit it and you'll be like, oh, that was great. And sometimes you won't or whatever. But I think, as you probably realize this too, is like the longer you go, the more chances you take. And then you just kind of realize that you might as well just do all of it. You might as well just do more and more stuff. Otherwise, what's the point? Like, try new things. I mean, it's just, there's almost no downside unless you're, contradicting your beliefs somehow, or you're not being genuine or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's something that Matt Tabor, who is normally here but is currently alphabetizing his protein shake collection.
I love how you're ripping on this guy, dude. It's great.
He and I are so close. It's great. It's fine.
I love it.
He always says when it comes to people who are timid about trying new formats or even about like getting their YouTube channel going. He says, who are you going to disappoint? Your 0 fans? Like, what are you talking about? Like, just make the thing, just try new things. You don't worry about upsetting people who aren't even there to be upset. And I think that's a really important way to contextualize trying out new things. Was this the video where you were talking about how you thought you were awesome at guitar and then you met everybody from Archspire and you're like, all right, I need to practice a lot more than I did before.
Which is very, very true. It's not a thing that I made up. It's the story I've told a bunch of times, random podcasts or whatever, where it's like, I thought, let's say, I'm 33 now. So I was 21, maybe 20 or 21 when I was trying out for the band. And it was a different group of guys. It was our drummer who is like, I would say he's the fastest drummer in at least Western Canada, if not Canada. I mean, I don't know who else plays faster in that specific style than he does. His name is Spencer Pruitt. He was in the band and we had a different bass player, a different vocalist. And so when I went in, I was like, hey, I'm pretty good. I'm like, sick. All right, I got this. I'm 21. I have that no, I'm not. But I thought I was. But I was practicing John Petrucci, whatever, like Dream Theater stuff. And I had a 7-string guitar. So I thought it was pretty cool. And I go in and I just suck. I mean, I'm nowhere prepared to play with these guys. I'm like, okay, this is like, it was everything that I want. The band was like everything that I wanted to do, but it was like happening right in front of me. And they're like, do you want to be in this band too? I'm like, I mean, that's all I want. Yes, that's it. And they're like, you have to get better at X, Y, and Z. Like you have to, if I don't know how many musicians are in your podcast listenership, but specifically sweep picking is like the technique to learn for technical death metal. And sweep picking is basically playing an arpeggio. Let's say you take a regular chord and you split it up into individual pitches and you play them sequentially, but you play them really fast, so really, really fast. And it sort of turns into like this smooth motion of like a sound. And that's like a staple of the genre.
Did Yngwie Malmsteen popularize that? Who popularized that?
I would say so.
Yeah, okay.
I would say so. Yeah, yeah, you're probably right. He's one of the dudes. I mean, you have gypsy jazz. Django Reinhardt would play a similar kind of thing, but sweep picking specifically is like, Yngwie Malmsteen, and then other players like Paul Gilbert from Racer X. Maybe not so much, but he did some similar kind of things. He did some sweeping, but not as much of a staple of his technique, but then you have John Petrucci from like Dream Theater, obviously big sweep picker. And then from there on, it just sort of, evolved. And I went home and I practiced for 2 weeks. I just learned the craziest sweeping thing I could ever find. And I just practiced it nonstop for 2 weeks. And I came back and the bass player at the time was like, whoa, you sound like a different guitar player. It's like, yeah, I mean, this is all I want to do. And I mean, I found exactly what I needed to get better at. I had a time limit. And it's like, I knew how my brain worked more or less for learning stuff. I had been playing for about 8 or 9 years at that point, just shy of 10 years, but I played a lot. I wasn't like a prodigy, but I mean, I played a lot of guitar. And so I understood how my brain sort of took in information a little bit. I understand a lot more now, but the way that you learn stuff, you have to be able to expose yourself to things that you want to get better at in the way that you are able to absorb them. So in the video, I talk about riding waves of frustration, talking about getting good at something and getting a little bit better over an hour period, and then starting to sort of get diminishing returns. And instead of putting your guitar away, you keep it in your lap and you play something that gives you joy. So then you play something exciting and fun that you can play, and it's maybe a go-to thing of yours, and then you get back into the practice and just break the cycle of putting away your guitar and just keep the guitar in your lap and just keep yourself exposed to that thing until you've sort of had your fill of that digestion or whatever that day of new information. And then you put it away, you come back the next day, you're going to be better at it. And that's just what I did for 2 weeks, and that's how that's how I look at guitar still. Just riding those waves of frustration, I call them.
Well, I think that the video is doing well because I personally have never heard anything put that way before. I've never really heard the advice, like if you're trying to learn a specific thing, once you get frustrated with it, don't stop altogether, just do something on the guitar or whatever it is that you're trying to learn that makes you happy or that you can do or that will kind of reinvigorate your ego, I guess, a little bit, because I think
that's it,
dude. Like everybody who can't do a thing definitely puts the thing away completely. Like everybody does that. The fact that you somehow unlocked this like life hack to keep playing the thing and not put it away completely and be like, I can't do this. I mean, everybody listening to this has a moment with probably a musical instrument, but maybe with something else, with drawing, with any sort of technical artistic skill that takes time, that you don't just pick up and know how to do, where once you decide you can't do it, you just give up. You like rage quit. If I can throw in like a video game analogy, you like throw your controller down and smash it into a million pieces because, you know, it's NBA Jam and Patrick Ewing just made a full court 3 to beat you in overtime. And you're like, screw this. I'm not even going to play this anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing about playing guitar is that it's all in your hands. There's nothing else about it that's controlled by, you know, in that analogy, it isn't like a video game only because you have full control over it. You're like, I can spend as much time or as little time as I want on this instrument. I can, like, the odds might be stacked against you because of your, let's say, the length of your fingers or the strengths of your hands or the endurance of your muscles or something like that. But other than that, it's like there's no one pushing against you. It's just you. There's no programming pushing against. You know, there's no random number generator that's in there being like, oh no, you can't do this yet, or it's a weighted die of some kind. It's like, no, you just sit there with the guitar until you are good at it. And if you don't like the process, then fair enough, because that's all really, like, people talk about natural talent or whatever. It's just, you have to enjoy the process as much as the end result in a lot of ways. Otherwise, you just aren't into that thing. You know what I mean? As simply as if you enjoy the process of learning something and getting better and then being able to do the thing on, let's say, guitar is a good example, or like you said, drawing, or something that's not artistic. Let's say, if you're trying to become an engineer and you like the process of learning how to do the math behind it, it's like, that's the natural talent, is that your brain likes solving those puzzles. So you found the thing that your brain likes solving, and good for you. You know, because some people some people don't have it as clear cut, or some people never try the thing that their brain is good at. You know what I mean? Because of fear or because of maybe other things. I don't know. I can't generalize for everybody, but like, some people just don't have that. And that sucks. But hey, I found my thing when I was like 12 and I was like, oh, that's the thing I like. So I'm just lucky in that way, I guess.
Yeah, or some people, you know, unfortunately haven't surrounded themselves with the type of people who will encourage them to do a thing that they think that they don't want to do. I know this sounds so conceptual, but this has happened to me so many times in my life, where other people knew me in moments better than I knew myself, and encouraged me to do certain things that I didn't think I wanted to do. But they said, no, you will be good at this. I know that sounds really weird, but it's true. Like, I wouldn't make this up. There are definitely different examples of, like, for instance, in college, I did improv comedy for a few years. I didn't want to do that. Like, I didn't like the idea of going up on stage, and, you know, due to the nature of improv, you can't prepare. You just hope that what you come up with is funny. So that sounded really scary to me. And I was like, I just don't want to do that. And there was a girl in a class that I had who essentially was like, I'm going to make you audition for this group. Like, you have to come. It's this night. You have to come. I'm not going to take no for an answer. So I did. I ended up really liking it. And I stuck with that group for 4 years. I ended up becoming the director after the first year. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, it's so like, I'm such an idiot. But then conversely, I originally went to school for computer science, and I was on a floor with nothing but computer science and engineering majors. And it did not take me long, let me tell you, to figure out that I did not have that natural passion that you're talking about, or the natural talent, because talent is a very real thing, to want to stay up all night figuring out how to build a, remote control car out of rubber bands and popsicle sticks or whatever I'm completely like diminishing what they do, but that's what it seemed like to me. That's what it seemed like to me. And I was like, I don't care. I'm not doing this.
Engineers, they use a lot of, a lot of glue, a lot of sparkles, a lot of, I mean, macaroni is a big staple. I understand that. And sometimes people just aren't into it,
It's what bridges are made of. If you ever like crack open a bridge, it's just macaroni.
Oh, that's great. Wow. You did learn a lot. Wow. That's interesting.
That's all I learned before I dropped out.
Okay.
But when it comes to the talent thing, one thing I thought was really interesting, that people are afraid to talk about talent. I watched a video a couple of months ago of a drummer reacting to your drummer, Spencer. Mm-hmm. I don't remember which song he was playing, but it might have been Remote Tumor Seeker. I don't remember which song it was. But long story short, this drummer, who is a great drummer, he has a great YouTube channel where he reacts to other great drummers, flat out said, if I practice this for the next 10 years, I will never be able to play that. He said that. He's like, I cannot do this. And it's not a matter of me practicing enough. It's a matter of this guy can do a thing humanly that I can't. And I almost imagine like a basketball player watching Michael Jordan or watching Steph Curry like drain half-court shots effortlessly and thinking, I could shoot hoops for 12 hours a day for the next decade, and I'm not going to beat Steph Curry in a three-point shooting contest. So it's okay to admit that.
I think you're right. I mean, some physical advantages are more obvious than others. You don't have to be 6'8" to be a good drummer. So the thing that Spencer does is so specific. Man, it's like, ask him to play a rock beat. Nope, fucking sucks. Hates it. Hates every second of it. He's like, he'll play. He knows 2 rock beats, and he is, if I'm being honest, not very good at either of them, and he hates playing them. So it's like he immediately, when he started playing drums, just went in one direction and never stopped. Right, and was very passionate about that direction. And always wanted to get better at that, and that was it. And like blinders on, no jazz, no rock. I think he took drum lessons when he was a kid a little bit, but they taught him some regular kind of stick control or whatever. But then after that, it was all downloaded Napster videos or LimeWire videos or whatever of drummers, and then after that it was YouTube, and then that was it. Listening to if viewers or listeners here know anything about extreme metal, like bands like Cryptopsy or Dying Fetus or something, fast drummers. And that's it, So it's funny because we played shows with, you go play some dive bar, some crusty kind of, whatever hall. And the sound guy, this is before we sort of learned, you need to bring your own front of house sound guy on tour. This was years and years ago, but it's like, you need to do that. So when we would work with house sound guys, every once in a while you'd hit one where he's the, I've been doing sound for 35 years. I know, it's just sort of like, okay, well, that's your job. And I understand that. And if you enjoy that, cool. But you just probably get free beer here and but they would be like, okay, so drummer, give me like a rock beat. And he would be like, no, when he's checking the drums. And he's like, well, I need to hear like what your kick drums sound like within a rock beat. And he'd be like, I'm not playing that. I'll play 350 BPM blast beats. I'll play the fastest thing that I can possibly play. But other than that, I'm not playing anything unless it's like a single, like one drum hit. It's like, because he doesn't care about that other stuff, and good for him. I mean, hey, if that's what you want to do, it's definitely benefited our band. I'll say that. It's, if you find somebody like that and you group them together with everybody else in the band who we eventually found after the initial lineup. So we got a new vocalist, and then we switched out and we got a second guitar player, and then we switched and we have a new bassist. So the group of guys that we have now are like so laser focused on exactly the same thing, somewhat melodic and catchy, extreme death metal that goes faster than most other bands. And that's, I mean, if I'm being honest, that's the gimmick, is play as fast as you can, but make it catchy at certain parts, involve melody, involve dynamics, but still in essence stay as fast as possible. And we all want to do that. So it's like, I mean, not only did we luck out finding a drummer who only laser focuses on one thing, we also all have the exact same focus as a group. And it's like, man, if somebody asked me, hey, what are some of your advice for starting a band? It's like, clone yourself. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, cause I lucked out, you know what I mean? And not only did I luck out, but I also, for the last 10 or 12 years of my life, almost exclusively thought about the band, which is, it's a weird thing to live your life around, because you're like, okay, the thing that means the most to me in my life almost all the time is this thing that most people think is like awful. They're like, oh, that sounds bad. It's like, well, yeah, I know, but I mean, I like it. You know what I mean? Like, well, yeah, but if you listen really closely, then you'll hear that there's like some influences of stuff you might like. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. It's like, okay, well, that's fine, I guess. So it's a weird thing to do. It's a weird path in life to take, I think.
Yeah, but I gotta say that what I love about Archspire so much is that coalition of all of you being like pulling in the same direction, to the point where, like, you know, people who, if you haven't listened to Archspire, talk a little bit about Ollie's vocals, because this guy, man, I watched a video on him months ago that I couldn't find again, because I really wanted to show it to other people. And it was a video in which he showed how far he can distend his diaphragm, which is revolting. It's extremely weird and gross. But this guy can distend his diaphragm at like it's the alien bursting out of his chest, basically, because he works on this thing so much to be able to do his vocals. What do you call them? Shotgun vocals. So absurdly quickly. And I loved the post recently trying to get a hold of Tech Nine to pay attention to that. But yeah, talk a little bit about, I mean, we've talked about Spencer, you know, we've talked about your singular focus on getting better and being able to do everything as quickly as possible. And then you have Ollie, who's just doing what he does, which is unlike anybody else.
Oh, he talks about treating his diaphragm like a bagpipe. Mm-hmm. So he like does this circle breathing thing that you use for like didgeridoo players, and he like keeps a certain amount of air in, so that, because he talks about it like hovering in between inhaling and exhaling when you're doing your vocals, because you like can't exhale all the way, because when you do, then it takes too long to inhale again. So you have to like balance the amount of force you're putting out, not get too far to the opposite side, but also not be too inhaled, because then it'll change the tone of your voice. It's like the whole thing is a breathing exercise. And not to mention, you also have to be like walking around on stage or whatever. And you also have to like drink like 10 beers a night, which is totally crazy. I mean, like those are all the things you need to do.
The prerequisites.
You need to get blackout waste. No, he doesn't do that anymore. Not anymore. But the whole technique that he does is all based on speed rappers. I mean, we're all really big fans of Tech Nine, and we've been listening to Tech Nine in the van like since 2009 or 2010 or whatever. And when we started the band, we're like, let's take all of our favorite extreme death metal bands and combine those with a little bit of classical music, even though at the time I was not as into classical music as I am now, or I was during the writing of the last album. It sort of took my wife to sort of show me a lot of that. And then extreme death metal, classical music, and super fast speed rap, and just like combine all those things. And we didn't know who could really do that vocal style. He grew up on Vancouver Island. And he and Spencer knew each other sort of peripherally, like they kind of had friends of friends that were the same, and then maybe they went to the same parties or something like that. And this guy was into extreme death metal or whatever, but he could also do a really good Ice Cube impression. And we're like, whoa, dude, like sound like exactly like Ice Cube. Like, not even joking. Like, so, whoa, that's really good. Like, wow. And so we're like, listen to Tech Nine. I don't know if he was super familiar. Maybe he was at the time. Listen to Tech Nine. Let's put together just like, that's the thing of the vocals, is just brutal, fast as possible. And so the first album, it went okay. It did some all right. He kind of learned how to do it. And then as the years go by, you have to like, because not only is he saying stuff really fast, he also has to write lyrics that make sense, that allow him to link syllables together to get him up to those speeds, but also make sense in the story. And each album is a concept album. So I mean, like I don't. That sounds really frustrating. Like I'm not into that. That sounds so overwhelmingly frustrating to be like, okay, I need to use this word here because it's 3 syllables, but it ends in a T so that I can get to the next syllable, which is an S. But I don't want to have too many S's because if you have too many S's, they slow you down, and each syllable has like a different weight to it. It's like a whole involved thing that I'm just grateful that we found somebody that wants to put the time into doing that. And not only that is he has like crazy acid dreams where he'll like come up with these weird ideas in his dreams where he's like, okay, so what if like a guy has like a pit in his backyard and he has to feed it bodies, but then it turns out he is the pit. And it's like, what, dude? Like, I don't know what that means, but it sounded cool. And so, yeah, let's do that. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just, what a fucking weird picture of my band I'm painting. We're all kind of weird in that way. I guess I'm like, maybe Toby and I, the other guitarists, are like the most normal, but like, yeah, the rest of the dudes are like, cause I don't want to jerk off the guys in my band so much, but I mean, the bassist of my band is also crazy.
Yes.
Just for the simple fact is that he didn't play bass until I asked him to try out.
What?
He played guitar. He had his diploma in jazz, or he had a degree in jazz. Sorry. He had a piece of paper from a school. Let's be honest. I don't really know what I did for him too much, but you
mentioned it.
He and I make about the same amount of money. So I mean, like,
wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least in this circumstance, but I mean, kind of, I'm also kind of his boss in a lot of ways, but that aside, just because he's new, he borrowed my 8-string guitar because it was the closest thing that he had to a bass, and he learned all the bass lines for one of our songs, and he came to jam with us, and he was a super cool guy, super chill and really good. And then he like rented a 6-string bass for like a few weeks and then came to jam. He's like, so what do you guys think? It's like, yeah, I mean, you're really good. I mean, frankly, if you watch him play guitar, you'd be like, that guy's probably the best guitar player in the band, which is
what?
He's so good at guitar. It sucks. Like, it's like we were backstage a couple years ago and everybody was passing around a new guitar that one of the dudes on tour had. And they're like, yeah, check out this new guitar. And I played, and then Toby played, the other guitar player in my band, and then Jared played, and then no one else played. Like, no one else was like picking up the guitar afterwards. Like,
just gave up.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Let's just put the guitar away. Maybe that would probably be better. So that goes against my advice earlier, but yeah, it's frustrating. So you have to keep the laser focus of what you want to do, but you also have to make sure that you're still good at the thing that you're doing. And I mean, I've been playing guitar for 21 years now. And, yeah, I mean, it's just like a constant kind of thing. I don't have to practice quite as much as I used to, but at the same time, it's easy to get distracted with other things and do too much video editing in 1 week and be like, I haven't picked up my guitar for like 3 days. Like, oh my God, that sucks. I should probably do that. You know what I mean? After
the third day, are you like fumbling or no?
I don't know. It really depends on what I play because like the band is all the music that we play is muscle memory now for me. Right. So it's just, it comes out, let's say the first time in a month or whatever, it'll come out like 70%. Yeah, I got most of it, but there's 30% of it I need to clean up or whatever. And then after a few repetitions of the song, it's like, nah, it's back to mostly what it is on tour. So it's like, it's weird. It's like lodged somewhere in my brain, which I feel is something that you get uniquely good at when you write music instead of just learning it. Like, we're all part of the writing process. All 5 of us get together in a room and we just like bounce ideas off of each other for 3 or 4 hours straight until we like can't stand it anymore. And then we go home and then we come back the next day and do it again. So
I'm glad you're getting into this because that was one of the, I didn't even write this down, but like months ago, I think I was talking to Jeff and the Baby Gang here. And I'm like, I don't know how these guys write these songs. It makes no sense to me. It is so fast. There are so many changes. Everybody's doing something different, but in a cohesive manner. It makes no sense. So please continue. How do you write these songs?
Yeah, I did like a guitar clinic one time where I was playing a few of our songs. So a clinic just basically like it was like a room of like 25 people or something like that, and just it was at a music store nearby. And I was talking about some techniques, and then it was a musician crowd, guitarists mostly. And I played a song, and there was like an elderly kind of guy in the front row, and he looked kind of confused. And then I played another song, and then he asked me, he's like, okay, so are you like making this up as you're playing it, or like what is this? And I was like, well, it's a song that we wrote. He's like, yeah, but what is happening? Like, how are you knowing when to change from one thing to another? It's like, that's the only way that you really get that like really ingrained, at least as far as I found, is if you write the music at the same time, not just learn it afterwards. So during the writing process, we're throwing ideas against each other. It gets heated sometimes, but like you like you like mark all these different riffs in your head, these different sections, because you were like there when somebody came up with it, and you understand like the mentality behind the section of music as it's being written. So you sort of like develop like this deep connection with this part of it's weird, dude. It's like, it's not like some magical thing. It's just more ingrained in my brain than I think it would be if I just joined the band. And the cool way that we write is, I think it's kind of similar to other bands that write all in one room, which is a dying thing, by the way. Most bands, I think, write online. We all live in the same city, so we can meet up. But I think most bands write online and send each other ideas. So-and-so programs the drums. So-and-so writes the bass guitar part and then sends it to the bassist, and then the bassist changes it a little bit, but keeps it, So it's like it's almost like coming from one brain to everybody else. Or whatever. But for us, it's like everybody's there at the time of the conception of the idea for like 90% of the music that we write. Sometimes we'll be sitting there for like an hour and a half, and all of us are just playing random notes until one person's like, what was that? Like, that's how little, like, that's how unprepared, or like, that's how little information we have or material we have before going there. Is sometimes we literally have nothing, like no ideas. Until one person says, hey, what was that thing? And then you all develop it. And then sometimes, dude, it's like, nah, it sucks. And you scrap it. And those are actually the most liberating moments, when you say, you know what? This thing isn't working. We came up with it 2 hours ago. We've been talking about it for 2 hours. We've been analyzing it. We came up with a goofy name for the riff idea. And we wrote it down on this whiteboard, and we're all looking at it, trying to, make it better. And it just doesn't work. Let's scrap it. And sometimes scrapping something is like the best thing that you can do for the music. And I also agree with that mentality for like a lot of things in life. Like quitting your job is like sometimes the best decision you'll ever make, because you didn't realize how mentally draining it was. Or if you did, you were too afraid to quit it or whatever. It's like, if I ever talk to anybody that works a regular job and they're like, yeah, my job's whatever. It's like, dude, quit. And like, no, I can't. It's like, no, you should quit. It's the best. Quitting your job is the best.
Your little devil Dean on the shoulder. Quit your job. Just walk out on your family.
Quit your job. Yeah. Yeah. It's just so
burn
good.
Your van down. It'll stop beeping. Just blow it up.
Have you ever worked? I don't know what you did before you did YouTube, but did you ever work? You must have worked jobs.
A lot of jobs. Oh, a lot of jobs. I'm old. Yeah. I had to work a lot of jobs before YouTube was invented. So right. Yeah, I did that for a while. Yeah. But I liked working, not 9 to 5s. I liked working in the restaurant industry. So you go to work at 4, and you get out at like 2 in the morning. I liked that lifestyle, and then all day you just sleep and work on stuff.
Okay. So you found time to work on stuff during the day.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, because everybody else is at work. If you don't work till 4:00, right? You're at work all night while everybody else is partying. This is the big secret for people who like spend too much money going out. Work at the bar. Don't go to the bar. Work there, because then you're making money at the bar instead of spending it all at the bar. But that's neither here nor there. That's what I did before YouTube.
And you would work on video projects before that?
Yeah, I would work on writing and comic strips and music.
Really?
In my band.
In your band?
I had, but I stopped because I couldn't imagine living in a van with my friends. No, seriously, man. Like, that was a big deal to me, was like, I don't really want to travel around in this van and like lug an amp around. Like, it sounds like I'm lazy, but I guess I am. But like, that's hard. It's hard and terrible. And I gave up because of that. I was like, if I could stay home and make things for the internet, wow, that's a lot easier than driving to wherever, and carrying equipment around and having it get stolen and all that, all the fun band stuff.
The thing about touring is that, so you talk about a 9-to-5 job or whatever. When you're touring and you're doing like a DIY tour, let's say you booked it yourself, or even if you're working with like a small booking agent or whatever, you probably don't have the capital or the income or the ability to hire a driver. And if you do, great. If you don't, okay, maybe you guys split the driving or whatever. But talking about a 9-to-5 job, touring is like the potential for it to be like a 24-hour-a-day job, because you are on tour in a van. Anything could happen at any moment. You could break down on the side of the highway. You have to be in and working and figuring out solutions to stuff. Like you could be woken up in the middle of the night because the trailer axle broke, or you could be taking a nap during the day and you have to go sound check earlier because there's no real structure to it other than load in at this time, hopefully, sound check at this time, maybe, play at this time, I guess, leave at this time because you need to make it to the next show, but maybe you'll miss it. Like there's no structure to it really that's like hard set. So it's like a really weird thing to do at like a DIY kind of level. And even when you get bigger, like even, us now, we have a merchandise guy that sells our merch, and then a driver, and then a sound guy who does mixes us live. So we'll have those crew members there, and one of those guys also tour manages. So you have a guy that does all the work, and then all the logistical stuff, and then somebody else to drive, and then somebody else to whatever. But you still you probably need to be there to figure stuff out. And it's like, yeah, it's not a relax. It ages you, dude. It ages you. Yeah, it's not all fun. But it is in the end really fulfilling and really cool to be able to go play death metal for your job. It's fucking pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, you got to think it's pretty cool to go through all of those steps, because they're not easy steps. And we talk about this on the YouTube side, all the time on the podcast, is like the amount of slog that people go through to make these videos, to make this content all the time. I was thinking the other day, like, I wish I could explain to people, if there's a content creator that you love that is putting content out all the time, they are working all the time. That's what that is. Like, you have to understand, like, if someone's putting out 4 videos a week, they're not doing anything else but making those videos all the time. I mean, I had to grind, I don't even remember what, like, the year it was, maybe like 2012 to 2014 or 15 or something. But there was about a 2.5, 3 year stretch where I did nothing at all, but make YouTube videos for 7 days a week for like almost 3 years. Wow. Nothing at all. It would take me about 4 days to make a video, and I put a new video out like every 4th day for like 3 years.
And something about that gets me very like stoked. Something about that is just like, that's fucking awesome. Like, it sucks to be in it, but man, you do the work, and then you just like, you can sort of chill out a little bit because you get way better at doing the work, and you can also live off of all that work that you already did, and you understand how, what to avoid in the future or whatever. It's like, that's pretty cool. That's really inspiring for me to hear that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it grew the channel a lot at the time, but yeah, eventually I did get burnt out on that. It just naturally, eventually you're like, you look around. It's like you poke your head up out of the sand and you look around and you're like, oh, I forgot what having a normal life is like.
Did your family understand what was going on at the time?
Well, I mean, they have had to put up with me my whole life, so.
All right, fair enough.
This was not kind of a surprise to them. I've always sort of like been that type of person like very introverted, very focused on projects and working on stuff and just going kind of from one thing to the next. But
that's cool.
One thing that I really want to ask you, because it's important to me, is the big question here is, what do I do now that I've found Archspire? And the question is, because my like kind of musical and metal journey has been this like slow ramp up to the point where I feel like I'm here at Archspire, and I'm afraid if I can make like a drug analogy, you know, like the first cassette tape I ever had was Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood. I think I was 4 years old, something like that. I was a little kid. You know, what's that? That's like a cup of tea or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you go to Metallica.
Yeah.
Okay. That's like a cup of coffee. Then you go to Pantera and, you know, you smoke a joint for the first time, whatever.
Sure.
The point is you kind of have to keep, as your tolerance builds, you kind of have to get harder. And my most recent band that I listened to nonstop before Archspire was Gojira.
Oh yeah. Great.
So From Mars to Sirius, Way of All Flesh, L'Enfant Sauvage.
Yeah.
Those 3 albums in particular, I listened to beginning to end a gabillion times for years. They're doing their own thing now.
Yes.
That's a little more an evolved version of their sound. They're selling more records as a result, and I'm really, really happy for them. But it ain't so crazy anymore. The Gojira sound ain't so crazy anymore. So now Archspire is what I listen to all the time. What in the world am I going to do unless you guys just keep putting out faster and faster albums for the rest of my life?
I mean,
what are my options, Dean? What do I do? Where do I go?
Okay, I'm not to sound like, oh yeah, we're the craziest. I understand what you're talking about because I have that with certain bands too. And I don't know, recently, you know, the thing I've been listening to, I listened to it for 2.5-3 months straight, multiple times a day, and it was only one album. I listened to fucking Bo Burnham, that Inside.
Really?
Inside, yeah, every day. Every single fucking day. I could not get enough of that album. I listened to it once or twice a day, and I would get excited about listening to it. I don't know why. Something. And then I would go back into his catalog and I'm like, his other stuff is cool, but something about that album, just like, man, it's just really inspiring and it's funny and it's catchy and it's well written and like the songs aren't too long and it's dynamic and it's like, you know, and it's like really like honest. Yeah, it's really just, I was just addicted to that album. So I know what you mean when you find something that you're just like, where do I go from here? Because nothing else is like feeling that sort of thing for me, you know? You know what I did? Instead of trying to follow it up with other music, I just listened to, you know, podcasts. I didn't try to fill it necessarily. When you're talking about trying to go heavier and crazier than the band that I'm in, there's plenty of bands that play just as crazy, just as insane music. Infant Annihilator is a band that I would suggest if you haven't checked them out. Really
writing it down.
Yeah, Infant Annihilator, really intense. We took some inspiration from them for this album.
It's a cute name.
It's cute. That's cute. That's sort of like it sounds like death metal from the future. You know what I mean? It's like somebody came back from like 30 years from now. It's like, here's an album that just everybody, you know, in death metal listen to. Is like, what the fuck? It's just insanity, dude. It's so cool. And it's really extreme.
Right.
So if you're familiar with the singles that we put out, you'll find on Infant Annihilator's new album, there's a riff that I totally ripped off.
Oh man.
So yeah. So if you find that, very good. I hope that they find that cool. If not, fuck them, whatever. I didn't rip it off entirely. It's just an idea. I was like, oh, I got to do that. It's so cool. So yeah, if you're looking for more stuff in like the same vein, that's a band. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. That's kind of why we put so much time into writing each song. Like, I mean, it took us 2.5 years to write this album that's about to come out. We have about a 3.5 to 4 year album cycle. So everybody says like you have, you know, all eternity to write your first album, right? So you have as much time as you possibly need to write your first album. But as soon as you have any expectation, then the time is shorter. You have 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, whatever. And then you set like a precedent. So, they do an album every couple years, 3 years, 4 years, or whatever. And so for us, yeah, it's like we wrote our first album. It was okay. We got some cool opportunities from it, but pretty small. Second album, yeah, more people liked it. First album on a bigger label, it was good. People enjoyed it. Third album, big step up with the production. New producer, bigger crowd, bigger headliner numbers, toured with better bands, bigger bands. The new one that we're doing now is going to come out. It's, in my opinion, it's our best. In all of our opinions, it's our best. It's our fastest overall. It's the one that we spent the most time on, and we put in a lot of subtle details so that hopefully if you listen to the full album once and then you listen to it the next day, you'll notice something new the second time, and again the third time, and again the fourth time, because it's so much to take in. And I mean, it is for me too. Like, I can listen to the actual recording and be like, yeah, I remember I sort of remember recording some of it, but I remember writing it, whatever. But when I hear a live version of some of our music, I'm like, what the fuck are we playing it like 10 or 20 BPM faster? Like, it's like foreign to me, you know? So listening to the production of the album, because it's so consistent every time, hopefully you can get as much as you possibly want out of that album until you're ready to go, maybe take a step down and listen to something a bit more chill, like, you know, some other, you know, Gojira or whatever. But we try to fill exactly the just the niche that we were set out to do in the beginning. And like, we take influences from really fast bands, but I think that we take just unique of an influence enough from a bunch of different bands that we can stand on our own with our favorite bands next to us. And so those bands sound different than us, and what you get out of us is it's only going to come from us. So I mean, I would suggest going back and, you know, I'm sure you're familiar, but like some of the Bach lute suites, the just like old classical, like old Baroque music, the level of density and craziness in those pieces are like so inspirational to me and a lot of the other guys in the band, that's where the influences come from sometimes. But obviously we can never touch that stuff. I mean, there's no way. There's no way I could touch that. I couldn't even play it. You know what I mean? It's like, let alone fucking write it. So, yeah.
The complexity is what I love, though, about Archspire, is like when you talk about multiple listens, you see this in film. Like, there are some movies that you really have to watch multiple times to kind of get everything out of it.
Yeah.
With Archspire, that's definitely the case for me, which is why I listen to the album over and over and over again, because there's so much going on that you do pick up. I mean, that was originally what I loved so much about Gojira, was particularly Mario's drumming. He would just, you never knew what he was going to do next on the drums with his,
they're a great
with
band,
his
dude.
fills, man. Like, it was always a surprise. And you could, I listened to those albums so many times. Yeah. And it takes that many times to learn the song just as a listener. Yeah. Just to know what's coming next and get excited about the different switch ups and everything like that. And that's definitely what's so appealing to me about you guys. Thanks. And kind of where I'm in trouble is I feel like I'm pretty bored with everything else. I'm like, oh, really? That riff the whole time, guys? Yeah. That's it? That's all you got? Like, okay. All right.
I appreciate
that's neat.
I appreciate that you think that about the band that I'm in, because that's really awesome. I don't really have too much for you though, because when you have like the only reason why we were able to do that is because we all found each other at the right time of our lives and just like all have exactly the same view on what we should do, and we found the right label, we found the right booking agents, we found the right other musicians to take inspiration from, we found the right producer, you know, and it just all kind of comes together. And it's like, yeah, well, that's exactly what I wanted to do. That's it. You know what I mean? Could it be better? Yeah, sure it could. But it's like, hey, we, you know, art's never finished. It's just abandoned. So, hey, we abandoned it as like my like, yeah, I'm happy abandoning this at this point. And I hope that you dig the new album, because it's going to be coming out, late next month. And, well, actually we have a new single dropping at the end of this month as well. So, I hope that you dig that one too. That one's probably the more well-rounded song on the album. We chose that one because we did like a full budget music video for it that's coming out at the end of this month, and it's like yeah, I think it's like the most well-rounded representation of our band, all encapsulated into one song that we could think of on the album. So if you liked any of our music before, I think that song will probably be like, oh yeah, that's, you know, that's the one that describes all the moves that we learned, you know.
That's the one that I send to somebody when I say, hey, check this band out. That's the important thing. That's important. That's an important thing.
Wait until you see the video too. Yeah, I think yeah, the ending of the video is going to be I think pretty crazy for people to see. We managed to work with some pretty great crew members in Vancouver, and we live in Hollywood North, so it's like some of the people that we managed to hook up with, it's like we got some of their skills and expertise for within our budget and managed to make it look pretty crazy. So yeah, so hopefully that video gets shared around quite a bit.
Is the producer of Relentless Mutation the same one on Bleed the Future?
He is. Dave Otero, yeah, he lives in Westminster, Colorado, just outside of Denver. Yeah.
Okay, because shout out to him because
he's the best.
Oh my gosh, guys, your albums, Relentless Mutation and the 2 singles that I've heard off the new one, the other thing is just they sound a lot better than a lot of other tech metal bands. Mm. They just do. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. It's just objectively, it sounds so full, but you can still hear all the parts. There's clarity in what you're listening to, but it's like there's clarity to the barbed wire baseball bat that's smashing you in the face. And that's a really hard thing to pull off. I a lot of tech death metal bands, they kind of seemed, in my opinion, to sacrifice, I don't know how to say this other than balls. They sacrifice balls for the clarity because there's so much going on with the guitar parts and the drums and whatever. They want you to hear everything. But when you hear everything, you're not getting that smashy that comes with that you guys pull off. He gets both out of your music, which seems amazing and impossippe, but it's true.
I get no credit for that. It's 100% how fucking awesome he is. If you're familiar with Cattle Decapitation, are you familiar with that band?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, really? Oh, dude.
No.
Oh my God. Oh, okay. Go listen to Monolith of Inhumanity. That's the album. The reason why we went to Dave Otero is because of that album, because the band Cattle Decapitation went to him for a couple albums before, or one album before, or whatever. And then that album, they just like, I mean, direct support to Cannibal Corpse, lots of headlining tours everywhere, and they're like way bigger. And we're like, whoa, what the fuck? And this album sounds insane. And there's like this new technique of like singing in extreme death metal that has like melodic properties to it, but it's not singing. And the drumming is like fucking intense. And the musicianship is crazy. Like, great band, great album. Yeah. Hey, if you're looking for something else to fill that, go listen to that album. It's great.
Awesome.
But yeah, he not only does he just like, okay, when you go to decide who you want to record with as a band, you need to think of, if you're going to go to essentially like a glorified engineer, someone who's going to be like, okay, give me your take of this riff. Is it the best one you could play? Cool, let's move on. Or someone who's a producer where they listen to the songs in pre-production, demoed out before you even go into the studio with them, and they say, here's my whole full page of lists, a full page of ideas for each one of these songs. And here's how I think you can make them better. So step 1, remove this riff. Step 2, let's cut this part out and repeat this later on the song. Step 3, like, let's shorten this intro. Let's lengthen this intro. Like, so many things go into having, like, a good album comes from not only having a good band, good songs, but also somebody who's behind the desk that's like, this riff goes on too long. And you get immediately like, no, it doesn't. But of course it does, because this guy is telling you that it does. I mean, this guy, he wasn't involved when you made that dumb joke in the jam space about how you should put on this riff for longer because of whatever, and you have all this built up history behind you in this part of the song, and there's animosity between one of the other guys in the band because you guys had a fight about this guitar solo or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't there. So he's like, this riff goes on too long. And you're like, yeah, it does. So let's cut it. And like, that is the reason why we go back to Dave Otero, because he's not afraid of telling us that. He has all of his own opinions. 90% of the opinions that he has works. They make the album better, and they make it clearer, and the production benefits from it, where he says, hey, here's this part that you guys are playing. You're all playing a guitar solo or a drum solo or a bass solo all at the same time. It's like, yeah, that's the point. It's like, no one understands what the fuck is going on. It's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. You know what I mean? Like, okay, just because the idea is like cool because you're playing it, it's like, yeah. But dude, like, that sounds too crazy. So you take one thing out and you're like, oh, it all clicks now. And I would not have done that. We wouldn't have done that had it not been for somebody like Dave. But yeah, I mean, just like a super talented guy, just, and when we go to record too, we do like a retreat style recording. So you're there for 6 weeks and, you went
to Colorado?
Yeah, you live in Denver. You live in his Airbnb suite behind the studio. You work 9 to 6 Monday through Friday and some Saturdays. You don't work Sundays. You work on the songs, practicing the songs, getting good, ready for your takes, getting ready for your days or whatever, listening back to the mixes, trying to analyze it, think about, the Wi-Fi is bad, it doesn't work very well. You play a lot of Monopoly. You can't watch Netflix without it buffering because the Wi-Fi is so shit. So you just sit there and you just have to sit in the music and like just be there. You don't go to work. You don't do anything else. You just are like working on the album. And that's how I suggest if you have the budget as a band, that's the way to go. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the best way to get the most awesome product is to just basically shut out most other things and just be there. And let inspiration come to you whenever it does. And 6 weeks, it makes you go fucking crazy. It makes you go like you lose your mind. We call it music prison. It makes you lose your mind because you just like, I don't know that many people in Denver. Like, I mean, I know some, but I mean, I'm not going to go to somebody's house. It's like, no, I'll just hang out here, especially not now. I mean, we were there in the middle of coronavirus, in the middle of the election. So we were like, as Canadians, we're like, oh, hey, yeah, we're going down to Denver there, eh? Like, like, okay, so the election is going to be determined in the middle of our recording session, and everybody has coronavirus. So I was like, let's not leave the house there, eh? Like, it's like, let's just stay here. And we mostly did. Yeah, and it was an experience. But yeah, I mean, hey, that's the best way to do it, in my opinion, just to lose your fucking mind over it.
Well, isn't that a classic kind of like, the Beatles went to this like weird, or the Stones, they went to this weird cottage in the middle of nowhere and they just lived there and they like ate acid and recorded whatever. I don't know.
Does that idea kind of like sound cool if you're thinking about it? Like if you had a project, maybe you've done this before, just all you do is just shut off everything else as much as you possibly can and just go work on it for a month and a half. And that's all you do. Like, I mean, does that,
that's what I want to do with my book. I have a novel that I've been working on periodically. Great. And I only work on it when I take sabbaticals. Right. So I'll take a sabbatical from Vsauce. I won't upload video for 2 months because I just wake up every day and work on the book. That's what the shirt that I'm wearing now is from my book, which doesn't exist. Like a draft of it does. Okay. But that's it.
Make the merch and then make the stuff. I like that.
Man, I had to make something because it's been like years and I'm like, I have nothing to show for this idea. At least if I can have a friggin' t-shirt, it sort of exists. Yeah. But I'm with you 100% on that because the distractions are death by 1,000 paper cuts. Yeah. When you really need to be focused in on with all of your creative energy on the project at hand, whether that's Netflix or emails or texts or DMs or whatever, like we are so plugged in, we are so like buried, like completely buried under information. Yeah. That I think now more than ever, way more than the Beatles needed to. I don't really know what they were escaping from, guys, or the Stones. What were you running away from exactly? Groupies, I guess? I don't know.
I guess.
But for us these days, man, it seems like you really need to go out of your way to go to the middle of nowhere and make something.
And I mean, he's actually talking, or Dave Otero is actually talking about, instead of being right in Westminster, which is like, I think it's like 30 minutes outside of the Denver airport, or maybe 40 minutes. He's talking about maybe moving up into the mountains, and that's where his retreat style recording will be. That's where his whole studio will be. He'll buy a house there, a nice big studio, do everything in-house, have a drum room there, have like a really nice place for bands to stay. It's like, that would be even more isolating, which would be good for some people, not so good for everybody, but good for some people. And I mean, if you're just crazy enough to want to like live in a van that beeps every 5 minutes for a living, then yeah, maybe you would be into going to live in a mountain home for 6 or 7 weeks and just only focus on your dumb little guitar solo. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, yeah, it's my little, I have to be heard. It's my guitar solo. It's like, okay, yeah. But at a certain point, it's like, yeah, well, people like the material. So yeah, go there and put the work into it, and it'll be better. And people like yourself will be more into it. So it's, but yeah, that's cool.
Well, because my big thing, man, is like, what is the alternative? The alternative, Dean, is you stay home and you watch Netflix. And it's like, man, that's not a great alternative. Like, it's not. Yeah. Like, it's kind of is depressing to me, at least. Like, I would much rather
talk a lot about when I was teaching kids a lot of the time, I would talk about fear choices. So they don't want to go do their school talent show. They don't want to go play. I was like, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to go do it, that's totally fine. But why don't you want to go do it? And they're like, well, I'm not very good or whatever. It's like, or maybe sometimes kids aren't very good at articulating their feelings. So they would just say, some weirdo reason or whatever. It's like, yeah, okay, you're 10 or 11, and are you making this choice out of fear? Because if you're making it out of fear, then you should like reconsider the choice, because the fear choice is almost never good. It's like, well, what if I do, what if this happens? Or what? It's like, yeah, I mean, what else are you gonna do? Go home and watch Netflix. That's the alternative. You're going to go home and wish you did the thing 10 years from now or whatever. And making fear choices is, it's tough, at least with creative sort of things. If you let the fear of failure fuck you up, then yeah, I mean, that's a choice in itself that just sort of, it's kind of boring. Well, and look, the other thing in your scenario I find very interesting is you hear this trope of, and we'll get to patrons' questions in a minute. I realize we've been going so long, but all of this is good. You hear this trope of, picture the audience in their underwear, or like picture them in a chicken suit. And you think to yourself, what does that mean? Like, really, like, why is that a thing? Why is picture the audience in their underwear a helpful or useful piece of advice when you're putting yourself in front of a group, when you're the center of attention? Right.
And I think it's because it's forcing you to understand that they're people too. Like, right. They are in their underwear too. Like, they're all naked underneath whatever they're wearing too. Like, they have their own shortcomings and shame too. It's not just you. You're not the only one who has a reason to be embarrassed or ashamed or whatever. Everybody has that. And the thing is, in my point of view, is at least you're putting yourself out there and doing something. At least you're the one who's willing to stand up and at your 6th grade talent show or whatever and say, hey, here's the thing that I've been working on, and like, I'm pretty proud of it, and I want to share this.
Yeah.
As opposed to just sitting and watching other people do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because you never.
Which one is better?
Yeah.
Which one is better?
Well, I mean, hey, it depends, because some people.
It depends.
Yeah. Some people just like, even if you strip away all the layers of reasonable, rational thinking, they still make the choice to not do it, and that is fine. Because if everyone was an artist, then what would we eat? You know what I mean?
Oh, that's okay. But hey, still, like, plumbers can be artists and plumb during the day. Like that. These are not mutually exclusive activities.
You're right.
My point, I think, is like, would you rather do something or do nothing?
Yeah. Hey, you're right.
If you boil it down to that binary, I think it's as simple as that. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm talking from a position of somebody who has some sort of madness enough to put myself out there. But to me, that's what it comes down to. It's like, do you want to do a thing or do no thing?
Well, I mean,
for me, it's like, do a thing. Just do a thing.
I made the choice today to wear these obnoxiously large headphones. You could see how large they are. Look at just how large and stupid and goofy they they are so puffed out. What am I doing? I get comments on these all the time, and I don't change them. I don't know what was I thinking when I ordered them. It's like, I knew that they were going to be big, but everybody's like, are those the largest headphones in the world? It's like, yeah. And they're definitely not even the most expensive. They're pretty cheap, but that's a choice I made. So yeah, everybody makes choices.
I'm old enough to remember when headphones were like normally like that. That's what headphones looked like.
Oh,
Have you ever seen like the old headphones where the wire was curly?
sure. Yeah, I got a curly wire right here. I'm a blast from the past, bro.
The 1/4-inch jack or whatever.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Because whatever, the 1/8 inch hadn't been invented yet. I don't really know how that worked.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Sure.
No idea.
But all right, let's move on. We have a lot of questions. I'll try to hit these as quickly as possible. Okay, Ben W wants to know if there are any. Well, you have talked about this a little bit. Non-metal musicians or bands that influence your style.
Non-metal. When it comes to guitar, I listen to pretty much exclusively like shred metal. Like, yeah, I think you mentioned Motley Crue earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I listened to like a bit of Whitesnake. Like my first, I owned a couple of tapes before we started getting CDs, and I would buy them at flea markets. And Whitesnake with Steve Vai. I was like, oh, but that's still metal. But I mean, it's a pretty different kind of thing. If you call my band metal and you call that band metal, it's like, okay, well, they're both music at least. So early shred guitarists. As in terms of like non-metal, like Baroque stuff, I'm really big fan of J.S. Bach. I really like Ravel and Debussy, like the sort of early 1900s impressionist or whatever composers, because they write really outside the box type stuff, and that's really interesting to me. I would put on the piano works of Ravel as I was sleeping, and I would wake up with my headphones in on tour because I was in a van or whatever, and you'd wake up and you'd be like on a different planet because you're like, what the fuck am I listening to? Like, this is bizarre sounding. It's like, and that stuff would like make its way into my playing. And so now when I improvise on guitar, sometimes I'll find like melodies of like these really weird, not to get too technical, but like whole tone stuff is really big with Ravel and Debussy or augmented or modes of melodic minor. That kind of stuff is like, whoa, that's like really alien sounding stuff. And and that stuff kind of made its way into my playing for sure. So yeah, I mean, not too much modern music that isn't metal, other than maybe some like, I'm a big fan of Tech Nine, like I said, but for the most part, yeah, just classical music, I guess.
And do you have any other instruments in your repertoire or just guitar?
Just guitar, yeah.
All right, well, I think Jeff has been sitting on this question since I leaked the fact that you were coming on the show a while back, and that is, what is your favorite guitar solo?
Oh, do you know Jeff Loomis, guitarist? No. So
no.
Okay, so his band Nevermore, there's a band called Nevermore.
Oh, yeah. I know Nevermore.
So, my light just died, but whatever. He has a solo on a song called "The River Dragon Has Come," and that solo is like fucking awesome. The tone of it is great. The playing is great. It's just everything about it is so awesome. That's one of my favorite guitar solos. Yeah, I mean, in terms of ones that I've written, my favorite guitar solo I've ever written is on one of the songs that is not a single that's coming out of the new album. So yeah, so that's coming up. So out of things that I'm ever most proud of writing, that's coming out on October 29th. So hopefully look out for that.
We'll have to wait.
Yeah,
we'll have to wait to hear that.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to Nevermore in a long time. I should.
Great band. Great band.
Definitely re-enter that world.
Yeah, dude.
The vocals of Nevermore are always so good.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't even mention that you have, because this question is about guitar lessons, and I know that you're doing your own guitar lessons on Riff Hard. I noticed that. So the question is, do you recommend one guitar lesson / exercise / instructional video? What would it be if you could only recommend one? I guess it kind of depends on what techniques you're looking into. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think if there's anything that you should learn, it would be to learn to play with other musicians. So learn, not even just like an exercise. Like if I give an exercise, it would be like, let's say, and again, not to get too technical, but like the 4-note per string chromatic exercise. 4-note per string is just like alternate picking, and you keep a strict alternate picking thing up and down the neck, and you do it ascending same way you do it descending, and it evens out all of your techniques. Okay, that's a great thing to start. It's a pretty easy thing to find online. 4-note per string chromatic exercise. It's like the spider exercise, all 4 fingers. But something more important than specifically technique is like learning how to feel out a room of musicians and learning how to like kind of feed off of them when you're first learning how to play guitar. So I had a guitar teacher that I went to when I was 13 to 15. And instead of teaching me only scales and exercises, he would teach me how to play bass for a guitar riff that I already learned and switch back and forth, lead guitar, rhythm guitar, and bass as he switched back and forth between drums, guitar, singing. All the students would change instruments, and you learn like how to musically communicate with people. So learning to jam is like the number one thing. There's so many things in there that you just like get. You're like, oh, I get. People say, hey, I don't know how to play along with a metronome or whatever. It's like, yeah, that is a tough thing because it's not human. There's nothing about it that's fun. It sucks. But playing along to a drummer and learning how the downbeat and the upbeat and all that kind of stuff fall into the things that you're playing and what feels good and what feels bad. You don't even have to vocalize a lot of it. It's just like, yeah, it just kind of comes out because you combine all of your influences, all the things you've ever heard in your life, and you realize that you can do all that stuff too. And you're like, oh, like I get it. Like the perspective switch of being like listening to music, switching from that to being a musician. You're like, I'm on an equal playing field, at least in terms of being able to create music as all the people that I look up to. Like a big thing for me is when you're first starting to play guitar, look at yourself playing guitar in a mirror, because you are the only person on earth that will look at yourself playing guitar from the perspective of looking down at your guitar. So you feel like you're like other. You're like, oh, okay, like it's a subconscious thing. You see everybody else and you're like, they look so comfortable with a guitar. They look like they were born with that guitar. Why don't I look like that? It's like, dude, you do. You know what I mean? You do. You just don't see it because you literally couldn't unless you put up a mirror or you record yourself playing or whatever. It's like, you got to just see it. And then you sort of like start to put the pieces together in your brain, and that imposter syndrome type of thing, sometimes that sort of eroded a little bit, and then you get a little bit more comfortable and you know. So in terms of like a specific exercise, yeah, it really depends on what you're doing, but learning how to be a musician with other musicians and learning how to sort of equate yourself to what you see in videos and on stage or whatever, being like, I'm also that. It's like, okay, that's the thing to learn, you know?
Yeah. What was the first song you learned how to play? Do you remember?
I learned how to play a Tool song by ear. It was only like one riff. It wasn't a full song. It was one riff. And I remember very specifically, like, how do I make the notes go down? That's all I remember. The first thought, I picked up a guitar and I was like, okay, there's like this note and that kind of sounds familiar. And this, because I was a big Tool fan at the time. And I was like, how do you make it go down? Not even lower, not even like down tune or anything. I didn't know any of the, like the vernacular or anything. I was just like, how do you go down? And like, so I remember that. In terms of like full song that I learned, like I learned some Beatles, even though I didn't like the Beatles, Day Tripper or whatever. I learned Crazy Train because everybody learns that. I learned all the basic things, but yeah, the first riff I ever learned was a Tool riff, and I remember. Even if now, if I watch myself play that, if I had some sort of time machine, I could go back in time and watch myself. I'm sure I was playing it wrong, but that didn't really matter. I was like, no, it's like totally the same. It's just like, it's not down enough. So I think I've gotten better at communicating music stuff now, I think. I hope. So. Well,
you mentioned Crazy Train. Mr. Crowley was the first guitar solo I remember like hearing and thinking to myself, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. And just like wanting to hear that guitar solo over and over over again.
Yeah, so just good. Like, man, it's fucking awesome.
The difference between that Randy Rhoads solo and like every guitar solo I had heard prior to that, it was like monumental.
Yeah.
It's like, I have never heard anybody do this before.
Yeah.
This is freaking awesome.
There's like a certain sort of like natural feel that guy had on the instrument that it's not because he was born playing guitar. It's because he just understood the instrument so like intimately that it's like, it was like an extension of his body in a more important or more like noticeable or valuable way than it is, at least for me at that time. I was like, that, like Eddie Van Halen, you know, okay, great guitar player, quite technically proficient, not the most, but quite technically proficient, wrote a lot of really cool stuff. But overall, the most like amazing thing is like to listen to him do Hot for Teacher, just the guitar isolated track. He did it in one take for the entire song, guitar riffs, the solo, back to the riffs. And it's just like, yeah, there's some fuck ups. There's some like little notes, there's some noises or whatever, but it's like, that's part of it. It's so natural and like effortless. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, the feel that guy had on guitar was just so crazy. It's not the fastest thing. Maybe it was the fastest thing you heard at the time, but it isn't now, that's for sure. But there was so much like emotion in it and like just like ease of execution that it was just like, I don't know, special or something.
It's a hard thing to understand, but I remember years ago looking up covers of Pantera's Cemetery Gates.
Oh, dude.
Dimebag solo in that song.
Yeah.
No one played it it never sounded right.
Yeah.
No one. I'd scour. I mean, maybe this is years ago, so maybe somebody can play it today.
Yeah.
But back then, I would go through a dozen YouTube videos of people playing that Cemetery Gates solo.
Yeah.
And it never sounded good. It was always like, you kind of are hitting the notes, I guess, but it doesn't sound like the way Dimebag played it at all.
Yeah.
It's so weird. That's such a weird thing to me.
Well, it's all
exactly what you're talking about.
It's all the small things. It's all the nuanced stuff. It's all the intentional sort of imperfection of it, where it's like, yeah, that's just how he plays. Like, I mean, you can play all the right notes, but it won't sound like him. I mean, Dimebag's a really good example of that. Ada Van Halen is a good example. Randy Rhoads, a very good example. Jeff Loomis is also a very good example of Nevermore. Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth is a really good example of that too, because that guy has insane feel on guitar. Definitely not the most technically proficient. Definitely not. He's a great vocalist, great guitarist, wrote some really cool stuff. But if you go back to an album that they did called Damnation, there's some solos on there that are like, how did you do that? I could pick up my guitar now and it'd be like, it sounds almost as good. And I mean, like, I'm sure I could shred circles around him, just sweep picking stuff that, sweeps that don't matter around him. Yeah, great, that's cool. But like his like feel on it is like, whoa, that's, I don't know. It's like almost, you can't replicate it.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. It's such a human thing too, sure. Which makes it special. Do you have any advice for aspiring artists if they feel like their music career is going nowhere?
I guess it depends on what you mean by nowhere. I mean, us as a band, we've toured with lots of bigger death metal bands, but we've never done a Gojira tour. We've never done a Slayer tour. We've never done a Megadeth tour or supported Metallica or anything, So we've done a lot of it more or less just by being a band that people like, a niche genre. And we started out small and we've made it so that we're kind of medium sized. You know what I mean? In the grand scope of things, we're probably still a very small band, but in our genre of metal, we're like a medium sized band, maybe. So like if your music career is not going the way that you wanted it to, that's okay. Change your expectations. But if your music career is going if it's going backwards, if you feel like it's going backwards, then yeah, you need to look at it with some sort of introspective, like, am I being honest and am I being like, am I putting out the music that I think other people would benefit from hearing, or am I putting out the music that that I would benefit from hearing? Like if your integrity is good and you can put out music that people enjoy, eventually people will find it. And it sucks that sometimes it takes a long time, and it sucks that sometimes other bands seem to get so big so quickly. But I was reading a book the other day with my wife, and there was a term, starvation economy. So starvation economy is that if somebody else benefits, then you suffer, but that's not true. So it's not like a bar graph where it's like someone goes up and you go down. It's if someone else goes up and they're in the same genre as you, good for you, because that brings more attention to the genre of music that you're playing, and potentially that means more people would listen to your music. So try to switch the perspective rather than, put more money into Facebook advertising or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it would be like a specific thing like, oh, all you got to do is play more guitar solos. It's like, no. You need if the thing that you're doing is fun, fulfilling, maybe some other people like it. Maybe that's not your goal or whatever, but it sort of happens. Then just switch your perspective as, hey, I'm putting out this music that I enjoy, and that has to be enough in a lot of ways. Some people it's not enough for them, and they push and push and push, and it gets a little bit disingenuous. It's like, we just do the thing that you love to do, and eventually, if other people like it too, they'll support you, and it'll snowball from there. But it's all about perspective.
Well, our resident musician Baseweight wants to know, what is your dream tour lineup? He says anything goes, and it doesn't have to be realistic, which means I don't know if like hologram Michael Jackson. I don't know how far we want to take that. But
if I'm being honest,
what do you think?
At this point, any tour will do. It's been 2 years since we toured. So if we were to tour, I will be glad to get out there and play music for people. And that's very cool. If I had to like add together all my favorite musicians or whatever, hey, here's a band. Do you know the band Necrophagist? Have you ever heard them?
Yes.
Okay. That's like the pioneers of technical death metal. Those are like the guys. Not a band anymore, but honestly, if we had a tour booked with them, supporting them in any way, I don't give a shit who else is on that bill. I don't care. Like, I mean, you can have just 30 minutes of a guy eating a hot dog on stage. I don't care. You know what I mean? At that point,
I would do that. Okay. Can I be the hot dog guy?
Hey, if you want to be hot dog guy, yes. Yeah, exactly. Our tour is 2022 from February 19th. So you're going to start, just get prepared eating those hot dogs. And I want you to dress very provocatively when you're doing it too. That's key. That is key.
That's how I live. Okay. That will be easy for me.
Very good.
But my hot dog themed bikini will finally be put to use.
Perfect. That's it, dude. Wow. Okay. So
did you see the thing where supposedly each hot dog removes 37 minutes from your life?
It seems like a thing. It seems like a thing you would know. Seems like
come on. There's no.
Seems like a factoid you would say.
Yeah, I did say it. I don't believe it. It's absurd. I hate stats like that. Right. It's like, what are you basing this on? Come on, give me a break. Like the mitigating factors that go into such a thing are pretty ridiculous.
I don't even want to do the math on that one. I have no idea.
No, it's like, what are your, Chinchilla wants to know what's your main inspiration and what's your main inspiration and what's your main inspiration outside of music? So maybe inside of music and outside of music.
The main inspiration is to put out music that I fucking like can see when people really enjoy it and that I really enjoy it. I'm excited to put it out. I when you're talking about like other bands, it's like my inspirations are like, like I said, Necrophagist, hey, great band, but now I've been playing long enough where it's like, I like combining the things I like combining, and sometimes I'll add a little bit, sometimes I'll take away or whatever. But really it's just like zeroing in and seeing somebody's face when they're like, whoa, that's really cool. It's like, oh man, that's so fucking, like showing somebody a new song that we wrote and watching them go like, whoa, that's crazy. It's like, that's the inspiring thing. That's so cool, and then outside of music, I like going on Instagram and looking at those really big, the Avid, I think it's Avid Composer or something like that. Those big timelines of movie edits where they'll show you the timeline of all of the cuts and all of like the segments of audio and video inside of like, let's say one of one of the Avengers movies or something. And you're like, wow, the amount of time and effort that went into edit that movie. I love looking at my timeline on Premiere Pro after I'm done a crazy video that's taken me 30 hours or whatever and being like, I can't believe I fucking did that. It's like, that's fucking awesome, dude. It's so cool. I just like, I mean, if you're talking about like things that I love doing, it's like playing guitar, writing music. Yeah, that's great. And that's like probably number one. But I mean, tied for number one is like editing video. It's like filming and editing video is like the most fulfilling thing that I've learned how to do in the last 10 years. Like easily, it's so awesome. I fucking love that stuff.
Yeah, that is cool. I mean, you do kind of have to fall in love with the results of that work. And that's the kind of thing that I think that you're alluding to, is that you get to see how the sausage is made sort of And that's exciting.
Yeah, dude. It's like watching people do magic tricks on YouTube. And when I did like a couple weeks where I was trying to learn a new card trick every day, I kind of fell off, but I got to get back onto it. But watching somebody show you a magic trick on YouTube, and then, okay, so they show it to you and you go, wow, that's cool. I want to learn how to do that. And then they show it to you how you do it. And you go, okay, cool, I can do it. And then they do the trick again and you're still confused. It's like, oh, cool. Like, that's so awesome. I know how you did it and I don't even know how you did it. Like, it's so cool. I don't know. I love that stuff.
Well, we have a couple of more before we get out. I'm going to crunch 3 into 1 because this has come up several times, and that has to do with DMCA and streaming and people using your music without consent. Did you have general thoughts about like this age of internet music that we're living in?
I'm always stoked when people hear the band no matter what. If you mean like DMCA, like trying to figure out if you can use my band or any band's music in a way that you can monetize and have the music part of it or whatever, it's like, I don't really know if I have too much of an opinion. Like we're at the size of a band where it's like, yeah, I mean, hey, if it gets our band more well known or whatever because we get put into a certain thing, that's great. When it comes to people streaming and putting music on the stream and then getting the stream shut down, that bums me out. Because I know I've had that once or twice, and I know that even my buddy Matt Heafy from Trivium, he has that has had issues with it on his channel too, where he's talked about it quite a bit. And he plays his own music on his channel. I also, it's just like, yeah, I mean, it kind of sucks. It's sort of like the music isn't really owned by the musicians anyway. And I think we're transitioning away from that with the power of just being able to market yourself however you want and just being able to put it out without the need for, you don't have to spend $50,000 to get into a recording studio anymore, right? Recording studios are cheaper. Recording studios, doing your first 2 albums or whatever, it's a lot cheaper, a lot easier to just do it yourself. Doing PR stuff, you can learn how to do a lot of that stuff yourself. The gatekeeping is sort of like, it's a lot less than it was 30 years ago or whatever. So I think that we're heading in the right direction anyway. There's so much music, which means there's so much more good music, but there's also plenty of bad music, not objectively bad, but just music I don't like or whatever. There's more of it, which is great. And people are just learning how to be more self-sufficient. It's cool when you don't have to rely on a big company behind you to put out your music and think that's the only way. Like, I've had buddies that play in bands that sign into a record deal and the record deal doesn't really pay them. And then they try to get some money out of the record company and they go, yeah, well, we gave you this one thing once. And so now technically we kind of own everything you ever do forever. It's like, whoa, dude. And this is like early 2000s. So it's like that, I like to think that stuff is going away, but maybe not going away, but just becoming more obvious that it's bullshit because, you could just book a show and record an album and release it on Bandcamp, and there's the start of your music career, or do a YouTube video stream with it, and it's like, cool, there you go. So I don't know. I think it's getting better, but I don't know.
Bandcamp is where I bought your guys' albums.
Oh, great. There you go. Yeah, well, that's actually run by our label, which is an independent label, Season of Mist, and they're great. They never creatively interfere. They never have anything. They always say, okay, so what's the album? How much do you need for this? How much is this? And they just give us the money, and that's great. But yeah, I mean, if I was starting a band now, I wouldn't think about getting signed like the end all be all of making it as a musician. I've learned a lot in the time that we've been with that label, where it's like, yeah, that's it was important to us then, but it's not the only way through.
Yeah. Well, Seasons of Mist is how I find out about a lot of bands.
Oh, great.
And actually, I think that that I found you guys. I think my wife is subscribed to their YouTube channel, and she'll just send me stuff that pops up on there every now and then. Be like, I think you like this. I think you like this. And I wish I could remember which song she sent me of yours, but I was like, I do like this.
It might have been Involuntary Doppelganger. Maybe it was that one, the lyric video.
It probably was Involuntary Doppelganger. Yeah, it probably was. And then the first song off of Relentless Mutation that really just was like, I love this band was Remote Tumor Seeker.
Mm-hmm.
Like that song was the first one that it just gets into you. It gets into you in a way that, like, quite honestly, a lot of the other songs you have to listen to more,
Right.
in my experience, to get them into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
But I think I listened to Remote Tumor Seeker probably like the second or third time I heard that track. I was like, I'm in. I'm in with these guys.
Oh,
we
sweet.
are on board. And
That's funny because that's actually the simplest song on the album. I think it only has 5 riffs. So you're talking about staying tech, like the gimmick for the band is stay tech, right? It's like that song has 5 riffs, I think, maybe 6, because the main riff, that crazy string skipping, that thing that we have in there, is essentially the same riff as the dun 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 dun. There's a heavy riff next. They're all the same notes. It's the same thing. We play that thing 3 times. We have a really simple outro. We have some solo stuff, which is actually just like not confutatus, but one of the movements of Mozart's Requiem. It's just dun 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 dun. So it's just ripped off of Mozart. And then we have one techie riff in the middle, and it's like 5, maybe 6 riffs and some guitar solos. And yeah, I mean, it's just, you know what's funny too is that song was the absolute hardest one to write on that album, and we thought that one sucked until like 3 months before we recorded it, and we made like 2 changes, and we're like, oh no, it's good now. Like it's just weird, that stuff.
Really?
Like, dude, it was like the worst song by far. We're like, that riff sucks. That riff fucking sucks. Like there's placeholder riffs all over the place. Like, and then we just did a couple tweaks, and we're like, oh, it was like an afternoon, and we changed the whole thing. And we're like, oh, it's much better now. You know, it's like,
I love the main riff in that song. I think is so good. It gets stuck in your head.
Thanks.
That's the gateway drug, though.
Right.
So it's funny, like I'm talking about earlier, needing to go crazier and crazier and crazier, and then meanwhile, the simplest Archspire song is the one that got me in. It got me in the door.
It's definitely the simplest.
Yeah. Okay, we have one last question, and it's from TCU co-host Matthew Tabor, who, although he wasn't joining us, needed to get his question in the most Tabor way possible. So here it is. I hope that you're ready. Okay. The gentle ammonia infusion of peeing on your hands and fingers can help form calluses over time. What do you recommend to strengthen hands and fingers and to toughen their skin without peeing on them during a pandemic?
And this is a friend of yours?
Co-host of The Create Unknown and writer on Vsauce too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I had to boil it down, not the piss, but don't boil down the question. Don't boil down the piss.
You can make gunpowder if you boil down the piss. I guess we don't have to get into that.
Sure.
Continue.
Yeah. It's talking about strengthening your fingers. Was that the question?
Essentially, yeah, strengthening your hands and fingers and toughening the skin. I mean, I've heard you talk a little bit about, and we didn't get into this. I don't know if it's carpal tunnel or just general pain in your hands from playing all the time.
I have some ulnar nerve issues in my left hand, in my left arm. I have some tendonitis, but I think honestly, I made a bit of like a not a U-turn, but just like a bit of a switch in how my body was feeling after, years of touring and stuff. Specifically my arms, like my ulnar nerve thing was like mentally really scary because I had some pains that I felt were going to end my music career, which is a terrifying thing to think as a musician. That's the only way that I make money is like playing guitar and doing things that involve dexterous little movements with my fingers. It's not really creepy the way I said it, but dexterous little movements. But the mental switch that I made after I saw some physiotherapy, a physiotherapist about it, was like huge. And just like understanding a little bit of how your body works, because it's pretty easy. Like you probably, I don't know if you're in the same boat, but when you get like a random pain and like all the thoughts go through your head of what it could be, and then you build it up. And let's say it happens once a month and you realize that you've never actually told anybody about it. And then like 5 years later, you're like, once a month, I got like a little bit of a pain. I wonder if it's cancer. I wonder if it's something more serious. I wonder if it's something that, and you just like, you don't even notice that you're doing it. And then you talk to one person that's in the medical field or somebody that and they're like, oh no, dude, that's probably just this. And you're like, oh yeah, what am I doing holding this weird thing in my head that I'm like dying? Like, I feel like it's probably a pretty common thing. Maybe I'm just out of my mind, batshit crazy. But that's what I had with my left arm. I had some pains. I thought that I had carpal tunnel. I didn't even know what that was. I was like, I got some really brutal aching and sharp pains and burning. And they're like, oh yeah, you got some inflammation of your tendon, or of the ulnar nerve. Do this exercise, do this. We'll do a bit of treatment. It was all good. And then it was fine. So I think the pains. Another big thing is I started becoming a little bit more physically active. Not that I'm like a fucking jock or anything. I'm not like a tough guy. I mean, I'm not a tough guy. But when I started doing some physical stuff, just some weight training, started building up the muscles around the affected areas, and that helped a lot. So just like remembering that your whole body is just going to break down anyway, and it's just like a constant fight to like keep it together for as absolutely long as you possibly can before you can't do the thing that you want to do, because nothing is permanent. So it's like, yeah, I'll just like do some bicep curls sometimes, and then I can play guitar for like a year longer. It's like, I'll do that. You know what I mean? It's like, because at some point, yeah, my guitar playing career is going to be over at some point. Let's just hope that's far, far in the future, rather than, 6 months from now when I forgot to do my, daily push-ups or whatever thing I'm doing, It's like just a couple of things to sort of strengthen everything as like a full working tool that all works together, because it all does. And also with my guitar playing, I think a lot about combining muscle groups to get certain tasks done. So I use my arms, I use my shoulders, I use my elbow, I use my fingers, my index and thumb for picking. I combine all that stuff as much as I can so that the workload isn't specifically on one part of your body. It's not all wrist, or it's not all elbow or whatever. And that helps, as far as I've been able to tell, helps keep things going like longevity wise.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's advice that everybody could use. Definitely YouTubers, man. We just sit in front of the computer all freaking day. I mean, I need that. Before I let you go, one more thing I wanted to ask you. You ever break your pickup switch selector? When you
yes, I have.
Nail that thing like more than anybody I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, bro. It's fucking cool. I mean, my wife thinks it's annoying as fuck, but I think it's cool. It's like, I learned that from Paul Gilbert, because he would do a lot of the stuff when I was a kid. I would like watch videos of him playing crazy Racer X or Mr. Big or whatever solos, and he would flick his pickup selector back and forth. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. And so I was like, wonder if I can just be really annoying and fucking do that all the time. and honestly, like, the only real reason why I mean, part of it's gimmicky, but also like the changing of a selector of the pickup selector. Sometimes if you can time it right, it gives you like a vowel switch sound. It sounds like almost like a vowel type sound, which is almost like what you get with like a wah pedal sometimes. And if you can nail that, it sounds a little bit like the human voice sometimes. And if you, like a little bit, like just a little bit more like a human voice, like a little bit more relatable to you, to someone talking or someone singing rather. So if your note, the highest note that you hit goes like a wow, like a little bit of a switch and vowel sound, then it just sounds fucking awesome. I just love that sound. And I tried to put a pickup selector switch in the new album and no one in my band would let me. And I was like, fuck. I was like fighting against everybody. I was like, come on. And they're like, we can hear it in the recording. It's like click. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. They're like, it's not cool. Okay. All right. I won't. But yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's cool.
Dean Lamb's solo album will be 90% just pickup switch clicking.
Yeah. Patent pending. Don't steal that idea, please.
Okay. All right. Great. I will not, because I cannot do what you can do, but nice. I vicariously enjoy it and pretend like I can. So everybody, dude, check out Archspire. Check out Dean's YouTube channel. That'll be your gateway drug for all of our listeners. You know, gateway drug into Archspire. Don't go straight into Archspire. You're not ready. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay. Start with Dean's YouTube channel. Get to know him. Get to, laugh along with him and his wife. Just see that him and her kind of try to figure out all of these crazy riffs from different bands. And then ease your way into Archspire, because they have a new album coming out. It's called Bleed the Future, October 29th. I will be there with bated breath day one. I cannot wait, man. And this was such a pleasure for me because, if you couldn't tell, I kind of like your band. I kind of like your band.
Hey, it's likewise, man. I've been watching your videos for many, many, many years. So it's very cool to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And everybody check out Archspire because I say so. And I think that's enough. All right. Thanks again, Dean. Take care, man. We'll see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We'd like to extend a huge thank you and congratulations to the Tots and Dumpster crew who save tiny little lives every single month. A tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders. Linus, our newest. Trevsdead, Boromir, Botdogs, Chinchilla, Isaac, Conrad, James, Andrew, Jeff Davis, Patrick Pister, Baseweight, Monahim, Dojangles, and Zero. And thanks to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Jen Maffasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Risebread, Sean Malone, Triple Question Mark, Ryan, Kamikaze, Maria Marco, Sheep, Tom Videogre, Jelksies, and Dan the Latch. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer Dan Yosua and producer-editor Ben Webster. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme, and to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.